All right, so we're on part 5 of the midterm study guide. So question 30 was, who won the election of 1800 and why is this election important, and 2 reasons. So it's Thomas Jefferson, the Democrat-Republican, versus the incumbent John Adams, who's a Federalist. John Adams currently holds the office, incumbent, of presidency. This is a really bad, election. There's a lot going on in this election. But Thomas Jefferson wins, and he is going to be the first Democrat-Republican president, and you'll never have a Federalist president again, okay? So during the election, Jefferson's from that different political party. When he transitions to the White House, pretty much everything's smooth with the American people. It's not smooth with Adams, but it's smooth with the American people. Jefferson has promised the American people that he is going to return the government to its original form, eliminating pretty much everything the Federalist Party had done with John Adams as the president. So this is why John Adams kind of panics and he creates the midnight judges. So at the last minute of his administration, he is signing away all these judges who happen to be members of the Federalist Party. He's giving them federal jobs. So he's giving them all these open vacancies, these open positions in the federal court system. When Thomas Jefferson comes into the White House, he realizes what's happened. He's upset, and he refuses to recognize any more of the appointments. So it's Marbury versus Madison, and that case is going to establish judicial review. So, number 31 is, what Supreme Court case established this doctrine of judicial review? What is it, and how do you use it? So, Marbury versus Madison established judicial review. It actually is being done by Chief Justice John Marshall, who is going to lead our Supreme Court at the beginning of our nation's history, and he is a Federalist. He is a midnight judge. He was one of those guys that John Adams appointed. Now, they rule a Judiciary Act illegal, but they actually are going to rule that they now have this extra power. This is not a power original. This is an added power. They say we, the Supreme Court, can go back to previous laws and cases to determine whether they're legal, constitutional, or illegal, unconstitutional. And that's the judicial power, okay? So the Supreme Court is going to review our lower courts, and they review laws to see if they're okay or they're not okay. And this has been used a lot in history. So remember, when we were looking at judicial review in our book, we looked at like Brown versus Board of Education, overturning Plessy versus Ferguson. You've got a lot of cases that judicial review is going to be used with. So question 32 is, what Supreme Court Chief Justice increased the power of the federal court through many, many, many key decisions? Chief Justice John Marshall. He's so important, he has a statue in the Supreme Court of the United States. So if you ever get to go visit, that's him. And it's a huge one. But he is a significant Chief Justice. We talk about a couple of them, but you're going to talk really more about another Chief Justice Earl Warren, in American II. And he's really kind of the court where there's, in the 1950s and 60s, where there's going to be a lot of civil liberties and civil rights cases being judged. So Chief Justice John Marshall, anytime a case comes to him and comes to his court, is pretty much going to rule in favor of the federal government. So question 33 is, which group of people had suffrage rights during the early republic? So in the beginning of our nation's history, early republic, it's white male landowners who are citizens. You don't have anyone else being included until a little bit later. So pretty much kind of like your guys who own plantations and your larger merchants. Question 34 is, what famous first lady tried to get her husband to give women rights? Is going to be Abigail Adams. She makes this comment. She writes it to him. They write a lot of letters. She says, remember the ladies. And so that's what she kind of gets known for her, let's give women suffrage. Let's give women rights. Question 35 is, what impact did Eli Whitney's cotton gin have on the need for slaves, and what did it do for the Southern economy? It definitely increases the need for slaves in the South. That's not really necessarily what the intent was. What a cotton gin does is it shifts the cotton and the seeds and everything, and it makes it easier and more profitable on cotton. So when the South gets this machine, slavery it's really expensive. And now you're going to make more money. And when they make more money, they buy more land. They want to plant more, so they buy more slaves. So the Southern economy gets more and more reliant on slave labor, and they become exceptionally wealthy. And this is where we get this term Cotton Kingdom. So thanks to Eli Whitney's invention at the beginning of our kind of early republic, you're going to have slave owners buying more slaves, getting more fiercely protective of anyone who wants to do away with slavery. They're going to, of course, throw them to the wolves. They don't like abolitionists. They don't like the people who want to do away with slavery. They just become very, very protective of this peculiar institution. That's what they call slavery, or a necessary evil. They also call it that. And is because economically they can't survive without it. But they like to say, oh, we know it's wrong. Yeah, they're all hypocrites, but this is what it ends up going on in the South thanks to the cotton gin, okay? Now, number 36, why were American Indians often coming into conflict with the American settlers? It's because the American Indians had land, and that land was cleared. It was already kind of like processed and done, and so the settlers want it. And eventually it'll lead to like the Trail of Tears, because you're looking at where like the 5 nations are going to be moved from. They're moved from southern areas, and they're going to be moved out here to Oklahoma, which is going to be known as the Indian Territory. And so, of course, we're going to talk about the Trail of Tears in the next era, but it is a very, very dark time for American Indians. Question 37 is, what was America's official foreign policy during the French Revolution and unrest in Europe? We are going to always try and stay neutral or isolated during the beginning of our history. We don't want to get involved because that was Washington's advice, is to stay neutral, stay isolated. So Washington does his proclamation of neutrality. Most presidents follow suit. 38 is, what were the terms of Jay's Treaty, and why did Americans consider Jay's Treaty with Britain a failure? So John Jay, one of our founding fathers, goes to Britain, and they go back and forth with, decisions, but finally you get a treaty. And what it says is the United States, Americans who had any pre-Revolutionary War debt would actually pay it. So there are a lot of people who feel like the war just kind of zeroed out their debt. And Britain is not happy about that because they want their money back. Their economy depends on it. So Britain wants the money back, and we want Britain to leave. They're here in the Great Lakes. They got military posts there, and their, military posts are like right there on our shorelines. So we asked them, hey, you guys leave the Great Lakes, and we will pay the debt. And so that was the compromise, because in treaties you kind of do a give and take. And at least it's on books. Most, I'd almost venture to say almost 100% of Americans don't actually like the treaty, because it's telling them they have to pay their debt, and they don't do it. So the Americans never pay their debt, and so Britain does not feel obligated to actually leave their military bases. So they keep their bases here, they don't vacate them, and so they're pointing their guns at us, and we refuse to still pay the debt. So it's kind of like a piece of paper. It's written, but it's not worth anything. You could ball it up and put it in the trash. The treaty doesn't solve the problem. And this is going to continue, and this is why we get impressment, and this is why we will get that War of 1812. Now, 39 is, what was the XYZ affair, and how did Americans react to it? So we talked about this, when we were talking about President Adams. So 3 French guys demand money from our American diplomatic team that went over there. The French are harassing us on the sea, just like the British did. We got Jay's Treaty with the British, but we would like to go ahead and do something with the French. So these French guys want money. We refuse to pay. They come back over here, and the American people are upset. They get outraged. We become very nativist, are anti-foreign. Americans do not like foreigners during this time period. There's going to be a lot of immigration laws that get very harsh, very strict. Now, Adams doesn't go to the war. He sends just another diplomatic team over there. And so remember, this is the United States, and here are the Frenchmen plucking our feathers, and this is Britain doing this. It's kind of making fun of us. All right, 40. What were the terms of Pinckney's treaty, and how did Pinckney's treaty with Spain improve trade in the Americas? So Charles Pinckney, one of our founding fathers, he is going to go ahead and negotiate a treaty with Spain, and the U.S. is going to receive navigational rights to this Mississippi River. We go up and down it. That's what navigational rights are. And we can actually bring our boats here into the port of New Orleans and deposit stuff. So we can use this as kind of like a shipping point, a port. So we get rights to this from Spain. Spain controls Florida and pretty much this area, like Louisiana Territory at the moment. And so it really does improve our trade, because now the Mississippi River, which connects with a lot of rivers, is going to allow our southerners to go ahead and put their cotton and all their other raw materials on flatboats and get it here so it can be shipped out to Europe or shipped up to the north. So it's actually going to allow for an easier transportation system in the country. Question 41 is, what were the 3 causes of the War of 1812 between the United States and Britain? So impressment is definitely one. Britain took American sailors, they took our merchants, they took the boats, they were taking everything, and they basically hauled it back to Britain. So they would force the American merchants, the sailors, into service, or you didn't make it. Okay, so number 2, Britain is giving weapons or arms to the American Indians, and so you're arming Americans' enemies. Okay, so they're giving the American Indians weapons, and that's not something that sits very well with the American people. Number 3 is war hawks. These are young senators in Congress who want war, and they want war because we want Canada. Canada's a huge piece of land. There's agricultural possibilities there. There's factory possibilities. We tried to get it in the Revolution. It was an absolute fail, so we'd like to try and get it again. So this war hawks wanting Canada is going to be something that we're going to talk about in Manifest Destiny. Americans are land hungry, and they're going to want Canada. So part of this is why we will go to war. You know, really the Canada land, this is one of our big reasons, and the impressment. Okay. Now, events during the war. D.C., our nation's capital, gets burned to the ground. The White House burns. That's not good. It means we're losing. The national anthem is written during the actual War of 1812. We have this thing called the Hartford Convention during the War of 1812. The Federalist Party pretty much, is mainly in the New England area. And during a war, you're not going to be able to trade. You're not trading with England. You're not trading with anyone. Every time they put a boat out in the water, the British Navy is blowing it up or taking it. So the Federalist Party has a meeting in Hartford, Connecticut, and they call for secession of the New England states. What secession means is the New England states say, this country's not working for us, and we need to leave the United States and form our own country. Well, if you do that during war, you're probably going to be viewed as a traitor. And that's pretty much what happens to the Federalists. So the Federalist Party dies out. Nobody's going to want to say, I'm a member of the Federalist Party, because we were going to kind of not really win, but we have a ceasefire ending to the War of 1812. And it kind of looks bad that you stood on the other side of it. So the Federalists die out as a result of this Hartford Convention. At the Battle of New Orleans, this is a battle that's very significant. This guy up here on the hill, U.S. General Andrew Jackson, completely defeats the British military here at the Battle of New Orleans. And this battle is going on during treaty talks, and it kind of really forces the British to go ahead and finalize on that treaty, go ahead and quickly sign it. Because if you let him loose, God only knows what's going to happen. The Americans might actually win the war. We're not really winning. We're not really losing. We are actually asking for the war to end because of that. So this battle in New Orleans is going to make Jackson a household name. And eventually, not that far down the road, he's going to become president of the United States. He is a hero. He is a war hero.